that President Biden should try to move back or bring back into action, I should say. They were able to get people who were violent criminals out, people who are committing some of these terrible...
What are you saying? What are you saying? Are you saying that the big cities are cooperating with ICE?
They were in the Obama administration. That's what
let's just talk about Joe Biden.
I'm talking about
everyone but Joe Biden. He went there today. What did he tell you?
Well, he told me that we need to pass the bipartisan border deal. And you know why? Because we need things like more Border Patrol agents. We need a higher threshold for asylum.
To let more people in? Why do we need more Border Patrol?
To stop people from coming? What are you talking about?
You build a wall, you do remain in Mexico, and you do the Title 42.
I guess I was right that nothing Joe Biden could have said or that I could have said would have stopped you guys from doing this.
Right.
These are real solutions.
Let's keep it moving. I love you, but let's keep it moving.
I'm not going to say it back to you. I just want to add that also John Fetterman said today that he would be open to a grand bargain about H.R. 2. No, it's good. These are things that are good for you. Why don't you let me get it out?
You can
as long
get it
as you don't touch DACA.
You can get it out, Jessica. But the point about the border bill is even if you sign this bipartisan border bill...
By James Langford, noted commie.
Jessica, you didn't probably even read it. Someone from El Salvador still comes across, and the Border Patrol, I don't care how many you guys hire, still catches and releases them according to this bill.
We don't know who they are.
The president wants us to talk about the bill.
Well, that was the absolute dumpster fire, except for Jessica Tarlov, of course, that we call Fox News. And as usual, when our favorite host over there starts speaking and making sense, they dogpile her, this time on the subject of the border. In this segment, I'm going to walk you through the parallel visits to the border from Biden and Trump, and we'll watch more moments from this edition of The Five of Jessica Tarlov doing what she does best, dismantling her co-host talking points. But starting with what you just saw in that clip, this is another one of those subjects where I know for my regular viewers, it gets a little bit repetitive. So I'll try to avoid rehashing everything that we've been talking about for the last few weeks. But essentially, again, Republicans said they cared about the border. And Senate Democrats, Joe Biden, and some Senate Republicans were for a border deal and still are for a border deal that then the MAGA Republicans in the House killed. They killed the deal openly and brazenly because they wanted it to hurt Biden politically. They want to see the issues at the border exacerbated so that they can blame Biden instead of actually just helping him implement solutions. The form of government that we have requires action from Congress on big issues like this one. And I'll also remind you, because the quick refrain, the easy refrain is, oh, well, it probably was just a bad deal, so these MAGA Republicans were sticking up for a better one or something. This deal was endorsed by the Border Patrol Union aggressively. They implored Republicans to support it. It's the legislation of the century for them. And of course, when people say that Biden isn't enforcing laws, so he should just do that, or he opened the borders, so just close it, they're lying. It's ridiculous. And I heard Jesse bring up releases. Another example of my previous point is that, as I've gone over in the past, a migrant was more likely to be released during the Trump administration than the Biden administration. So are there issues at the border? Yes. Did Biden cause them? No, of course not. But he's clearly willing to try to solve them, take responsibility for them, and act on them. But Republicans are obstructing that from happening. With that being said, here's Biden at the border, then we'll get to Trump.
The Speaker of the House needs to put this bill on the floor, because if he put it on the floor unrestricted, it would pass. The majority of Democrats and Republicans in both houses support this legislation until someone came along and said, don't do that, it'll benefit the incumbent. That's a hell of a way to do business in America for such a serious problem. We need to act.
And here's another moment from Biden.
And folks here in Brownsville and all along the border know that. We need to have their backs, your backs. I want the people to understand clearly what happened here. This bill was in the United States Senate, was on its way to being passed. Then it was derailed by rank and file politics, partisan politics. The U.S. Senate needs to reconsider this bill, and those senators who oppose it need to set politics aside and pass it on the merits, not on whether it's going to benefit one party or benefit the other party. It's about whether it benefits the American people. It's what the American people deserve.
And then I'll show you Biden addressing Trump super directly in a really good moment. But first, to give you the contrast, on one end, you have Biden level-headed, talking about solutions, calling on Republicans to work in a bipartisan way with him. We can all take credit for that. On the other, you have stuff like this.
Because everybody I speak to says how horrible it is. Nobody explained to me how allowing millions of people from places unknown, from countries unknown, who don't speak languages. We have languages coming into our country. We have nobody that even speaks those languages. They're truly foreign languages. Nobody speaks them.
Yeah, disaster. And then here was Biden's message directly to Trump.
Let me end with this. I understand my predecessor's an eagle pass today. So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together. You know and I know it's the toughest, most efficient, most effective border security bill this country has ever seen. So instead of playing politics with the issue, why don't we just get together and get it done? Let's remember who the heck we work for. We work for the American people, not the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. We work for the American people.
I've said it a bunch of times, but watching Republicans demand congressional action on the border and then block congressional action on the border has been stunning, to say the least. And if I were Tucker Carlson, which I'm happy I'm not, but if I were, I would say it was very radicalizing. I felt radicalized about this.
It will radicalize you. That's how I feel anyway. Radicalized.
Strange moment. Then back to more from today's edition of The Five on Fox. The subject is Trump got removed from the Illinois ballot, of course, because of the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment barring individuals from office if they engaged in insurrection. And the other Fox host said this was Democrats threatening democracy. It's the left, actually, that threatens democracy. And Jessica Tarlov said, no, none of that.
So maybe I have 30 seconds. I love days when you guys think that you're describing Joe Biden, but you're actually describing Donald Trump. So the person who didn't want the American people to be able to speak in 2020 was Donald Trump, and he had his team of crackpot lawyers fan out across the country to bring frivolous lawsuits when there had been recount after recount to make sure that the American public was disenfranchised and that we wouldn't know how Georgia voted and we wouldn't know how Arizona voted. Then he called up people to put pressure on them to find him 11,000 plus votes in Georgia. We know he did it in Michigan. Ronna McDaniel helped him out with that. That is the threat to democracy, and that's what this case is about.
Absolutely correct. And we've litigated this so many times, but of course, even I would rather Trump lose because he's crushed by Biden in an election than because he's kicked off of ballots. That would be more satisfying, right? But we can't selectively enforce the Constitution. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is there for a reason, and it has to be taken seriously. And then, of course, as Jessica pointed out, Trump is the actual individual who threatens democracy for all the reasons that I go over usually multiple times a day, trying to block the peaceful transfer of power, calling for the termination of the Constitution, saying the government should go after media outlets he doesn't like, saying he will indict his political opponents in a second term, and on it goes. Then the context for the next clip is the other non-Tarlov Fox hosts were arguing that it's crazy that Democrats are upset that the Supreme Court is hearing Trump's immunity case, and that's going to delay the election interference trial and maybe make it take place after the election or make it really difficult to have it all concluded by the election. And the hosts were acting like there's no reason to make sure the trial takes place quickly, but Jessica had a good response.
And when we talk about this impeachment inquiry, which is obviously a catastrophic disaster for Jim Comer and company, you guys say, well, we need to know if Joe Biden is dirty. Right? I don't want to go on November 5th, show up and say, well, is this a guy who's making millions of dollars off of China and Uzbekistan, whatever, pulling diamonds out of his hair, whatever you're going to say?
That's why they shut down the laptop.
Oh, right. The penis pictures that were going to decide America's future.
And all the
point is, don't we deserve to know if one of the nominees for president is a felon? That's what this case is about. And Jack?
Yeah, if the right wing were confident that Trump did nothing wrong and he'd be acquitted in a trial, then they would want the trial to happen before the election, right? So that the American people can see that play out. Prove to the American people you didn't try to steal an election by blocking the peaceful transfer of power through schemes like the fake elector scheme. Prove it to us. Come on now. But he can't. And that's why he wants to delay. Great job, as always, to Jessica Tarlov. If you have not watched episode 1 of Deprogrammed yet, the show where I spend a day with Trump supporters and see if I can convince them to give up their support for him and literally throw their MAGA hats in the trash, make sure you watch it. You can click here to do so if you haven't watched it already, and you can click down there to subscribe. And again, share around Deprogrammed. I want it to do well enough to justify doing a second episode. I have a really interesting idea for the second episode, so I want to implement that. Again, click there.